To turn now to Tucson, where investigators found bones in a wash not too far from Nancy Guthrie's home. According to our sister station, that's KVOA, that discovery made yesterday morning around 9 o'clock. A large amount of officers and investigators there flooding the scene. And after further analyzing those bones, Tucson police determined they are prehistoric human bones, and they do not belong to Nancy Guthrie. Now, she is the mother of Today's Show co-host Savannah Guthrie, and she has now been missing for more than 3 months. The Guthrie family offering $1 million in reward money for information leading to her recovery. Anybody who does have information about Nancy Guthrie is urged to call 1-800-CALL-FBI.
On Thursday, someone walking the desert terrain near Nancy Guthrie's home in the Catalina foothills neighborhood of Tucson, Arizona, found a human bone. Not a piece of clothing, not a personal item, a human bone. Lying in the desert near the property where an 84-year-old woman was taken from her home nearly 100 days ago and has not been seen since. The person who found it was not a law enforcement officer. They were not part of any official search operation. They were a live streamer. Someone who had been walking the terrain around Nancy Guthrie's neighborhood on camera, searching for clues, documenting what they found, and broadcasting it to an audience that has been following this case since February. The discovery was reported to the Pima County Sheriff's Office. Investigators responded. And what they confirmed in their official statement is the detail this episode needs to deliver to the viewer, clearly and completely, before anything else is said about it. The bone is ancient. The Pima County Sheriff's Office issued a statement confirming the discovery and their assessment of it. Their words were direct. This will be a prehistoric anthropological investigation. This is not a criminal investigation. Ancient. Prehistoric. Not connected to the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. Not evidence in an active kidnapping case. Not a development that changes the direction of the investigation that has been running for nearly 100 days without a public arrest. The bone belongs to someone who lived and died in the Arizona desert long before Nancy Guthrie was born, long before her neighborhood was built, long before any of the events of February 1st, 2026. That is the confirmation. That is what investigators said. And this episode is going to be honest about what it means before examining why the discovery still matters for understanding where this investigation stands and what the community around it has been doing. But first, the context. Because a human bone found near an active kidnapping case location, being identified as prehistoric, is not the simple resolution it might appear to be on the surface. It carries its own questions about how this investigation is being searched, who is doing the searching, and what the presence of a dedicated community of citizen investigators in this terrain actually means for a case that has produced no official resolution in nearly 100 days. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She is the mother of Today's Show co-host Savannah Guthrie. She was last seen at her home in the Catalina foothills neighborhood of Tucson, Arizona, on the evening of January 31st, 2026. Her family reported her missing the following morning, February 1st, when she failed to appear at church, a pattern break that the people who knew her recognized immediately as wrong. Blood confirmed as hers was found on her front porch. Doorbell camera footage captured a masked armed man standing at her front door in the early hours of that morning. The FBI and the Pima County Sheriff's Department have been investigating her disappearance as a targeted kidnapping since the first days of the case. 95 days later, no suspect has been named. No arrest has been made. A map of the Catalina foothills neighborhood, with its large lots and long driveways and properties set back from the road, surrounded by desert terrain that stretches outward from the residential grid in every direction, gives you a sense of the geography that citizen searchers have been walking since this case began. The desert in this part of southern Arizona is not a flat, open expanse. It is rocky, uneven, overgrown in places with palo verde and saguaro and creosote. Things deposited in it, whether by human hands or by wind or by water during monsoon season, can travel significant distances from where they started, or they can remain exactly where they were placed, largely undisturbed, for decades, sometimes for centuries. The live streamer who found this bone was doing something that has become a regular feature of this investigation's public dimension. Citizen searchers, independent content creators, and community investigators have been walking the terrain around Nancy Guthrie's property and the surrounding neighborhood since the earliest weeks of the case. They have found things before, clothing items in a wash behind a property connected to the investigation, details in publicly available footage that formal coverage had not addressed. The community engagement with this case has been genuine, sustained, and occasionally productive in ways that official search operations had not been. Thursday's discovery followed that same pattern. Someone searching on their own, broadcasting on a live stream, found something that required an official response. The sheriff's office responded. Investigators examined the bone, and they issued a statement that closed one question while leaving the larger ones exactly where they have been since February. This is not connected to Nancy Guthrie's disappearance. That confirmation matters. It matters for the integrity of the investigation, which does not need false leads consuming resources. It matters for the family, who should not have to absorb the emotional weight of a bone discovery that turns out to be prehistoric. And it matters for the public conversation around this case, which has been susceptible throughout to the kind of alarming development that turns out, upon official examination, to be something entirely different from what it first appeared. But here is the detail that this confirmation does not resolve. The Pima County Sheriff's Office confirmed that this particular bone is ancient. It did not confirm that every inch of the terrain surrounding Nancy Guthrie's home has been systematically searched. It did not confirm that everything that could be in that desert has been found. And it did not provide any update on the active forensic and investigative threads that this channel has been covering for nearly 100 days. The bone is prehistoric. The investigation is not. And the community that has been walking that terrain, finding things, reporting them, and keeping this case visible is still out there, still searching, still watching. What that community has done in this investigation, and what Thursday's discovery adds to the picture of where the search for Nancy Guthrie actually stands at nearly 100 days, is where this episode goes next. The first thing to understand about Thursday's bone discovery is that it happened the way a significant number of this investigation's most discussed findings have happened. Not through official search operations, not through law enforcement canvassing, through a citizen investigator walking terrain with a camera. That pattern has defined the public dimension of the Nancy Guthrie investigation in a way that few missing persons cases have been defined before. The community that gathered around this case from its earliest days has not been a passive audience. It has been an active, investigative presence in the physical landscape of the case and in the analytical landscape of the public information surrounding it. Earlier in the investigation, a YouTuber named Jim, whose channel is called Exploring with Jim, returned to a wash behind a property connected to the case and found multiple items of clothing lying in the same drainage channel where a prior discovery had been made weeks earlier. The sheriff was notified. Deputies were aware. The finds were documented and photographed before being reported. That is the protocol that citizen searchers in this investigation have largely followed. Document first, report immediately. Let law enforcement assess the significance. Thursday followed the same protocol. A bone was found. The sheriff was notified. Investigators came. They assessed the bone as ancient and issued a statement confirming it was not connected to the criminal investigation. That is the process working the way it is supposed to work. A community member finds something concerning. Official investigators determine what it actually is. The public receives a clear answer. The answer in this case, ancient and prehistoric, is one that anyone following this investigation closely will need a moment to absorb. Because the instinct when a human bone is found near an active kidnapping scene is to place it inside the frame of that investigation. The instinct is to ask whether it is connected, whether it changes anything. whether it means something that nothing else in this investigation has meant yet. It does not. Not in the way that instinct suggests, but it does mean something else, and that something else is worth examining carefully. Because the terrain around Nancy Guthrie's home has now been the site of multiple significant discoveries by citizen searchers across the course of this investigation. Clothing in the wash, a bone in the desert, each one requiring official response, each one generating a period of uncertainty before investigators provided a characterization, each one reflecting the sustained, physical, on-the-ground engagement of a community that has been walking this landscape for months because the official investigation has not provided the kind of visible, documented search presence that the community believes the case warrants. Former FBI profiler Jim Clemente said earlier in this investigation that there is sufficient behavioral evidence at the crime scene to build a meaningful profile of the person responsible. Retired FBI Evidence Response Team agent Maureen O'Connell has been examining the physical evidence surrounding the property since the case began, including the circle driveway, the decomposed granite surface, the tire impression question that she raised in her analysis of the drone footage. The behavioral profilers who appeared in Brian Enton's CW special described a sophisticated operation with a possible puppet master behind it. FBI Director Kash Patel confirmed the Bureau was kept out for 4 days and had a plane ready to move the DNA that the sheriff declined. None of that institutional analysis has produced a public arrest. None of those forensic threads have produced a publicly confirmed result. And in that vacuum, in the absence of visible official progress, the community has kept showing up. To the washes, to the desert terrain, to the landscape around a house where an 84-year-old woman lived alone and was taken in the middle of the night. Thursday's bone is ancient. The community's presence in that landscape is very much contemporary, and the question those two things together raise is one that this investigation has been dancing around for months. Is the official search of the terrain surrounding Nancy Guthrie's home as comprehensive and as systematic as the case requires? Or is the citizen search presence filling a gap that should be filled by official resources? The Sheriff's Department has maintained throughout that the investigation is active, that resources are allocated appropriately, and that the team working this case is focused and experienced. Those statements are on the record. At the same time, the documented institutional record of this investigation, the 4-day FBI exclusion, the DNA lab choice, the no-confidence vote, the potential perjury exposure, the public rebuke from the FBI's own senior officials, raises questions about the gap between those statements and the operational reality that citizen searchers keep encountering when they walk the terrain themselves. In April, investigators sent a DNA hair sample discovered near Guthrie's home to an FBI laboratory for testing. The Sheriff's Department described it as potentially critical evidence. That hair sample, the rootless strand recovered from inside Nancy's bedroom, is now at the FBI's Quantico facility after spending months at a private Florida laboratory. C.C. Moore, the forensic genealogist who has solved more than 300 cold cases, has said publicly that if Estrella Forensics, the laboratory that pioneered SNP extraction from rootless hair, can produce a viable profile from that strand, identification through genetic genealogy will follow within weeks. That pathway is open, it is being pursued, but it has not produced a result. And in the meantime, on a Thursday afternoon in May, a live streamer walked the desert near Nancy Guthrie's home and found a bone that turned out to be ancient. And the Pima County Sheriff's Office confirmed it, addressed it, and closed that particular loop, in the way that official investigators are supposed to close loops when the evidence does not support a connection to an active case. That is the system functioning. But the bone is gone, and the investigation is still exactly where it was before Thursday. No arrest, no named suspect, no confirmed answer to the question that has been at the center of this case since February 1st. And somewhere in the desert, around that Catalina foothills neighborhood, the terrain that citizen searchers keep walking because they believe something is still out there to be found, The investigation continues its patient, largely invisible work. The question that this episode cannot answer, and that the bone discovery makes more urgent rather than less, is whether that work is producing something that the public will eventually see. Whether the forensic threads and the behavioral profile and the communications archive review are converging toward a result that the investigation is not ready to announce publicly, or whether the terrain and the tips and the 30,000 calls that have come in and the citizen searchers walking washes and deserts have collectively produced what Ray Carr's source described in 2 words that landed harder than anything else said publicly about this case in nearly 100 days. We got nothing. That question does not have a confirmed answer this week. It has the bone, and the confirmation that the bone is ancient, and the investigation continuing without visible resolution into its 100th day. There is something specific that Thursday's bone discovery reveals about this investigation that has nothing to do with the bone itself. It reveals the shape of the community that has formed around it. In nearly 100 days, the Nancy Guthrie investigation has generated something unusual in the landscape of missing persons cases. Not just media attention, not just a tip line that received 30,000 calls, a sustained, physically present community of people who have been walking the terrain, watching the footage, submitting the tips, and showing up to the places where answers might be found, because the official investigation has not provided the visible, transparent, publicly accountable search presence that the scale and profile of this case seems to demand. A Livestreamer found a bone on Thursday. That Livestreamer was in the desert near Nancy Guthrie's home because they believed their physical presence in that landscape might contribute to finding her. They documented what they found. They reported it. They followed the right protocol. And when investigators confirmed the bone was ancient and unconnected to the case, the Livestreamer's contribution was not to solve the case, but to demonstrate again that the community around this investigation is still out there and still looking. That matters. Not because citizen searchers will find the answer that professional investigators have not found. The forensic pathways in this case, the DNA at Quantico, the behavioral profile being built by the BAU, the communications archive review that Jim Fitzgerald recommended. Those are not things a citizen search community can access or advance. They require institutional resources, legal authority, and scientific expertise that exist only inside the investigation itself. But citizen searchers do something else that institutional investigations sometimes struggle to do over time. They maintain pressure. They keep the case visible. They prevent the drift toward deprioritization that affects every investigation that does not produce a quick result. And they sometimes find things in terrain that official search operations have not covered as thoroughly as the community believes they should have been. Maureen O'Connell said earlier in this investigation that the investigation is not a cold case. She said investigators are still working through tips, still pursuing IP addresses connected to suspicious communications, still building the evidentiary picture that will eventually support a prosecution, if and when a suspect is identified. She said law enforcement has patience that the public and the press often do not have. And she said the most unexpected moments can break cases open. A word said to the wrong person, a couple who separates, someone who has been carrying a secret that eventually becomes too heavy. Those things take time. And the community that has been walking the desert and the washes near Nancy Guthrie's home has been providing the visible pressure that keeps the case from disappearing while that time passes. The bone found Thursday is ancient. It will be handled as a prehistoric anthropological matter. It is not connected to what happened to Nancy Guthrie on the night of January 31, 2026. But the person who found it was there because of Nancy. Was there because 95 days into a federal kidnapping investigation with no public arrest and no confirmed answer, the community of people who have been following this case refuses to stop looking. That refusal is the most sustained and most visible expression of what Ed Smart described when he spoke about the Guthrie family needing not conspiracy theories, but real information and genuine support. The community around this case has been imperfect. It has produced conspiracy theories about innocent people. It has directed anger and accusation at family members who have been cleared by law enforcement. It has created noise that has complicated the investigation and caused real harm to real people. But it has also walked the terrain, found the clothing, reported the bone, kept the tip lines active, kept the public conversation grounded in specific, confirmable details when it was at its best, and refused, across 100 days of no answers, to let this case become invisible. Savannah Guthrie said it. Someone needs to do the right thing. It is never too late. Our hearts are focused on that. The bone found near her mother's home on Thursday is ancient. The wrong it is asking someone to do the right thing about is not. Nancy Guthrie has been missing since February 1, 2026. She is 84 years old. She had a routine. She attended church. She had dinner with her family on the last night anyone confirmed seeing her. She went inside her house and the door closed, and she was not seen again. Blood confirmed as hers was found on her front porch. A masked man with a weapon was captured on her doorbell camera. The FBI was kept out for 4 days. A plane sat ready on a runway and was turned away. A rootless hare spent months at the wrong laboratory. All of that is the confirmed record of what this investigation has been, and none of it has produced a name. The terrain around her home is being walked by people who believe a name is still out there to be found. The FBI laboratory at Quantico is analyzing evidence that forensic experts say can produce that name within weeks if a viable profile is extracted. The Behavioral Analysis Unit is building a profile from the behavioral evidence at the crime scene. The Communications Archive review that multiple profilers have recommended is, investigators hope, underway. Thursday's bone is prehistoric. The investigation is current. The community is present. And the answer that Nancy Guthrie's family has been waiting for since February is still somewhere inside all of this, unreached, but not unreachable. Here is the question this episode wants you to sit with. The citizen search community has been present in the terrain around this case for nearly 100 days. They have found clothing in a wash. They have found a bone that turned out to be ancient. They have kept this case visible when it might otherwise have drifted from public attention. Do you believe the official investigation has been as thorough in physically searching the terrain surrounding Nancy Guthrie's home as this case required? And do you think the community's sustained physical presence in that landscape has been a help to the investigation, a complication, or something of both? If you have been following this case on this channel and you are not yet subscribed, this is the moment to change that. The DNA is at Quantico. The forensic pathway is open. The behavioral profile is being built. And the community that has been walking the desert near Nancy Guthrie's home will keep walking it until the answer comes. This channel will be here when it does. If you have any information related to the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie, contact the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI or submit a tip at tips.fbi.gov. You can do so completely anonymously. The reward is more than $1 million. If you have seen something in the terrain around the Catalina Foothills neighborhood that seemed out of place and that you have not yet reported, please make that call. What seems small may not be. This content is for informational purposes only. No individuals are being accused of any crime. All information is based on publicly available reports, named on-record sources, and verified mainstream media reporting. The Pima County Sheriff's Office statement quoted in this video is attributed directly to the department's confirmed public statement. All analytical inferences are explicitly labeled as such throughout. All persons referenced are presumed innocent unless proven otherwise in a court of law.